Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley Cardinal. I use they, she pronouns. I identify as Two-Spirit. I am from Good Fish Lake First Nations, which is also known as Whitefish, which is about hour 45 northeast from Amiskwaci, Waskagan. A little bit about me. I am the chair for the board of directors with the Edmonton Two-Spirit Society. I'm also an activist. I am also an artist. I am also a practicing traditional tattooing individual. I got my start with that in August, and it's one of my biggest passions and how it coincides with my identity as a two-spirit person and honoring the many different identities that I carry and the hats that I wear. I'm a parent of two and four. I have one cat and one partner. I have been with E2S for about just over a year. So the first year that I have been with E2S, I've been doing a lot of mentorship, sitting in on meetings, learning how to sit on a board, governance, but also trying to do it from a decolonized perspective. And that's what I really enjoy most about that, is being able to sit in the community. So I'm happy to be here and share what little I know from the journey I've had so far in coming into my own two-spirit identity. So hi, I'll pass it on to Rob.
Thanks so much, Ashley.
Hello. Hi. My name is Rob Gurney. I am from Montreal Lake, Saskatchewan, Treaty 6. I identify as two-spirit. I use he, them, or if I'm in drag as LaDonna Cree, I use she, her. I'm also the drag mother of the Cree house with 3 kids, 3 daughters, and then my granddaughter is the mother of the Indigenous house at Beaver Hills. And we have about 11 members, and we just introduced our first cis female into the group, so that's pretty cool. And I work with Alberta Health Services as a peer support worker for the opiate dependency program on the mobile team. So we go out in the community and help people get them started on Suboxone or methadone or whatever they're at and what they need. I am also a full-time student at Norquest, taking my social work. I was a previous board member of Edmonton E2S. I'm getting the two mixed up. E2S, and yeah, I have been clean and sober, walking the red road for the last almost 9.5 years now, and I'm currently the other two-spirit regional two-spirit warrior. I think I have that right. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Thanks so much, Rob. Also, you can peeps Rob beautiful crown behind them above their head to the right. Yeah, gorgeous. Okay, Richard, you're up, my friend.
Good morning, everyone. I'm in my vehicle. I was wanting to make sure that I get a good Wi-Fi service, but down the road, oddly enough. I'm Richard Jenkins. Wahpa Stemni Sika Suan, White Horse is the belly button that I come from. And that's my spirit name and my settler name, I told you. And I'm from Moose Hill, the place where the moose come to start their crossover, I'm told. And I'm close to 60 years old. I know I look much younger than I am. And I'm from Treaty 6 territory, northeast of Edmonton, or what Amiskwaci, Waskagan. And who am I? A little bit about who I am. I'm a cisgendered male. I am two-spirit. I'm white passing sometimes, depending on how I wear my face or my hair. And that affords me some privileges, and I've taken advantage of those privileges on behalf of my Two-Spirit plus Indigenous queer kin, many of whom are displaced from their families, cannot find their families, do not know who their families are, and lots have been rejected by their families. So for me, I've been privileged to be connected to my family my whole life. I have only sisters, and part of that, I think, when I was getting ready to come through, was by design. And being Two-Spirit for me is about being able to see order where chaos lives, and to create chaos where there's an overabundance of order that makes no sense. So that's part of what I believe is being Two-Spirited means for me. And as part of that shifting between something and something else, that's that energy of Two-Spiritedness, is the ability to shift from one perspective to another. And when you see that in the word Kiswe, Ganswell, which is one of the deities that helps guide and protect Two-Spirit people, small children and warriors. And so for me, Kiswe, that first word, when I was growing up, we were taught that Kiswe meant you're crazy, but really it means you're shifted from your perspective from mine. My perspective is different than yours. When you look at things and say things in a different way, that sounds crazy to somebody else. And so that has, for me, been a place of solace and comfort to be able to know that Kiswe doesn't mean what it used to. It means something way broader, and it means something that supports and acknowledges and invite those of us who can do that to shift one way or the other. So I'm just holding up my hands here. I'm not trying to get anybody's attention. I'm trying to hold my hands up because the sun's coming through behind me. See that? I can show you the light. Look at the light. And being Two-Spirited is being able to have fun at any given moment, because life is so freaking crazy. It's Kiswe right now. It really is. And that's not our fault. You know, there's old people in our community that talk about, oh, it's going to be your fault. You queer people, you gender diverse people, all this crazy stuff, man. That's your fault. And it's like, no, it's not. It's the fault of whatever it is. I don't know. I'm not God. I'm not creator. I don't understand those reasons why life gets to be a little bit too much sometimes. And I want to just tell you that I'm a little late because I'm in a bit of a distressed place. One of my grandsons came home for his grandmother, his kukum's funeral. So already he's coming home, he's sad. And then he connects with his father, and they've not had a great relationship. And so chances are you're going to hear some reports in the next few days about a shootout in Kihêw. And my grandson shot his father. And the police shot my grandson. He's stable in the hospital in Edmonton, but we're not sure about his father. We think he passed away. But I haven't got any final news about that. So that's why I'm a little late. I'm a little trying to connect to family and get updates and all of that. So another thing about being Two-Spirited is no matter what's going on, we show up and we do the work, and we try not to complain too much. Although sometimes that's such a struggle. But thank you for letting this much. I'm sitting here in my car. I was racing out of my house to get here, to get to a space where I had good Wi-Fi. Being Two-Spirited is being creative in the moment. Being Two-Spirited is being able to hold those feelings and to feel them, not to deny them, but to feel them. and to just be okay and vulnerable to share them in a place like this. So thank you, and I'm so glad that I came on this call, because I could use some a little support right now, and that's what this call is helping me do. And you're not seeing me at my best, but you're seeing. And so for me, that was so important, because we need positive, good messages. We need good people like my colleagues here, like Rob and Cheyenne and Ashley, who are also doing amazing work in our community and holding court like a whole bunch of tempests in a teapot. With that energy that we have, that ability to shift. And when we get frustrated and freaked out and angry and upset, that energy starts going like that. And that can be a distressing place. So for me, having this session is medicine for me. So please, try not to get too worried about me. I'm doing okay, and yeah. So I'm trying to remember all the questions that Cheyenne shared last night, the other night, whenever it was, and how do I express my two-spiritedness? Well, part of my understanding of two-spiritedness, we're a big part, not all of us, but many of us are part of ceremonial circles and being able to be conduits between the spirit world and the natural world. And in that space is where we're able to draw all of that healing energy from. So that's where healing energy exists in its purest form, is in the spirit world, when it's that wave of potential as opposed to the particle. Once we become little particles, little chunks of carbon, we collapse into physicality, and then things get slower, way slower. And when I want stuff to happen quicker, I take my tobacco, I go to the ground, or I go to the water, I throw it in the air, I do whatever with that tobacco to get it to spirit and to open those portals so that natural free-flowing energy from spirit world can flow through not just me, but people like my colleagues, Ashley, Cheyenne, and Rob, and so many others across the country, across North America, who are relearning who we are. And in spite of these terrible, awful, dramatic, traumatic things that happen to us, that we carry on, that we dig into the deepest part of ourselves to say, I am a powerful human being, and I can hold my own, and I can reach out when I need to, and say, I need a little bit of help, I need a little bit of support. And so that to me is the power of being, to owning who we are, and to not be afraid of the tears and the freaking out and the scares and the fear, like all of that stuff. Like, it's just, you're, again, like I said earlier, you're kind of getting me in a raw place, and probably maybe this is the most authentic presentation I will ever make, and you'll have it recorded. So, another thing is, this is kind of like 2S genderqueer, plus, and it's the ability to expand time or contract time. And I know that sounds a little kind of wee you, but I've had those experiences where somebody said, oh, you've got 2 days and you've got to get this much done. And in that space of focus and determination to get it done, things happen. Those ancestors come and they help expand time around us. So we're able to do 10 hours worth of work in 2, and it's happened. And people have watched me, and they see sparks coming out of my eyes and my ears, smoke coming out everywhere. So it's, somebody says, oh, we can't do that, it's not possible. I'm like, please don't use those words in my presence. I do not like the word impossible. I like the word infinitely possible, and let's at least try and give it a try, give it a shot, see what happens. And at least, like, part of my thinking right now is shoot for the moon, you get a high mountain. Hey, we didn't even know we could get the high mountain. and now we're on it. And you know, in terms of our community, we're reclaiming a whole bunch of space that we were denied, we were erased from, we were excluded from, or we were hidden in, because our settlers who came back to the center of life on this continent to relearn, some of them, how some of you that are on the life, relearning how to reconnect to spirit. So I'm going to leave it there. I've probably talked a lot, but I just kind of needed to get a whole bunch of that out and to feel and to express that, not to be afraid of it. I'm never afraid of people's feelings. You know, like Cheyenne knows that. Ashley's becoming, you know, she's getting better at knowing that. Rob hasn't quite seen it yet, but you know, like when other people freak out, need to say what they need to say and own their feelings, own their space, and just, you know, like say, that's what I'm feeling. I am so honored when people have the trust in my space to do that, to just like authentically own their frustration and their indignance and all of that and their impatience. So with that, I'll pass it back to Cheyenne. I'll get lost in my thoughts.
Hi, Richard. We are sending you so much love. Your family has been through a lot in this last year. So just know that we're here for you if you need anything, if we can support the family in any way, medicines, love, ceremony, whatever you need, you know, we got you. So thank you for still coming and holding space with us and being so vulnerable with us with that and trusting us with that. So we just love you so much. Yeah, so I guess you segued us really good into our first question. And this is a question I get a lot in my role. So as community educator, I often do, or as community liaison, sorry, I often do community education stuff alongside my other colleagues, Sissy Thiessen. They're not here today, but we both go into schools and businesses, organizations. And one of the big things I get asked, what does two-spirit mean? Like, that's like, and I was like, I can try and answer it, but you're going to have more questions than when we started. So we're going to go around, and Richard's kind of already talked a little bit about what it means to him. But we'll go around the table and just, I'll throw it to my other colleagues here. What does it mean to be two-spirit? Like, how do you express that? What is like, how do you get them two-spirit vibes and live in them in your fullest? And so Rob, do you want to go first? Or not, it's okay if you don't want to.
Pressing the mute button. Yeah, thank you. And yes, Richard, sending you real big hugs, and I will give you a call later on and check in with you. Two-spirit for me is, oh geez, this is such a loaded question.
No pressure.
Yeah. I'll start from how I feel myself as two-spirit. I think Creator decided I'm going to be two-spirit and be two things and have my foot in one area and the other area for many parts of my life. I am part of the 60s scoop, so I was raised Caucasian, but I'm also Indigenous. So as my adult life, I discovered my culture. So I had my foot in both doors there. I work in a mostly Caucasian system. But I also work with a lot of Indigenous coworkers and people that are out there at work and that are out there houseless and struggling, and also seeing those that are succeeding. I'm pansexual, but I aim more towards guys, but I do appreciate all. So I have a friend, those two. I am a single parent. I am still father, and I'm not the mother because the mother's still in the picture, just not as much. So I'm kind of pulling away for both of us in some ways, but I would never say that I'm his mother. I am in a relationship with my schnookums. We've been together for 22 years. But people go, 22 years, how old's your son? 17. How does that happen? It was kind of, I won't say a poly, but it's, you know, we all self-identify our relationships, and there's so different spectrums and stuff. And I think that's a good segue, you stealing your word, into two-spirit. It's kind of, there's a spectrum on how people view themselves. It's there is definitely culture and tradition that are there. historically. I think I'll leave that for Cheyenne, though, the historical stuff. You say it so well if you're able to share that later on. For myself, my understanding is that we were held in high regard and we had a place there and we were helpers. We would be able to go out as warriors and also be there cooking meals and doing those things that they kind of give to different binary people in Caucasian world. That back then was just kind of who we were. I am also present myself as a male during the daytime when I'm going to school and I'm working, but when I'm doing drag, I present myself as a female, although I'm exactly the same person for the most part. There's a little bit of a diva going on when I'm in drag, but that's okay. And I find that my position as being two-spirit is to be able to be empathetic with the gift of empathy that I think the Creator gave me, to be able to always, when I used to sit at the bus stop, I used to have people sit down. I still have that here and there. They'll sit down and just start talking to me. It's like they know, and I have no problem with them. I start talking with them and they will let me know everything going on in their life. Not everything, but what's going on at that moment. And so I'm able to relate to that. I'm able to wear different hats. At one point, I'd never shared this with anybody. So this is something I'm going to be sharing, but I don't know whether, maybe this is because Richard is sharing his and just gave me the inspiration to do that. I was once diagnosed with multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder in my early 20s, because I was presenting as a male and a female at different times. And I was going through my own trauma and substance use disorder, heavy substance use disorder. So all those played a part in it. And being at that age, trying to discover myself. And so they decided that and I had to deal with that for quite a while until I figured it out, that, wait a second, no. When I sobered up and cleaned up is when I was able to figure out that that wasn't what it was. And then when I got introduced to Two-Spirit Society, I was started, and people that were two-spirited, Boyd and some of them that were in the rooms with me, they got talking about the anonymous rooms, and I just ruled it on me. I didn't say Boyd, and I just said it again. No, I keep saying Boyd. No. No, I just, but that's when I realized that, hey, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't have multiple personality disorder. I don't have these things, and they really had me going for a while, believing it, and it was pretty spooky for a while. I'm glad that I was able to be clean up and sober and get the therapeutic help that I needed, and to be able to ceremonies. Oh my gosh, ceremony is such a huge part of being two-spirited for me, because that's my culture, and it's where I'm able to be healed. I guess that's a big word, and to be able to help heal others and understand and be able to have a safe space. And it emotionally and mentally is huge for myself. Yeah, that's what kind of Two-Spirit means to me, and how I try to relate it to myself every day. And I try to be as authentic as possible. Yeah, except for my new teeth. Veneers, can we say veneers? Thank you very much.
They're beautiful. We love your new teeth. And they're still authentic, just, synthetic authentic. That's a thing. Ashley, I see you just turned your camera off. I was just going to call on you. Would you prefer I go first?
Hi, sorry about that. No, I was getting a call and I forgot to do not disturb on. So,
okay, you're up.
Okay, well, hello again, everybody. I think I would like to answer what does it mean to be two-spirit? My journey began, I knew for a really long time, ever since I was a child, that there was something different about me. I knew for a while, and I think that because of the colonial aspect, westernized patriarchy household that I grew up in, where it was a man and a woman, solely a man and a woman, and those specific gender roles, that I had automatically structured myself to as a full woman, because I look present femme for now. uh, so growing up outside, I left the reserve when I was about 10 or 11. I grew up in Fort McMurray. And that's when I started realizing, even coming more into my identity as somebody that was not, I guess you could say, one spirit or straight, or I like that one, the one spirits. I came out when I was 15 to my mom as bisexual. And it was just not, my mom supported me. My mom was okay with it, but it was just not something that it was talked about or seen, or it was, I grew up in a home where stuff was not okay, let's just say. And so I feel like a lot of my addiction that I spent since the age of 14, 15 years old up until I was like 30, 29, 30, a lot of my addiction was rooted in that identity crisis about who I was and the kind of my own sexual identity, even my own gender identity. Like 15 was my first outing, and I had my first girlfriend when I had my first girlfriend when I was in like grade 7 or 8, and she broke my heart. But grade 7 or 8, and then I would secretly like dabble with other females, but it would only happen when I was under the influence, because I was so built and born into this frame of mind where I couldn't be that person. I couldn't honor that part of myself because of the intergenerational trauma that passed into my family due to residential schools and 60 scoop, and even being a day school survivor myself. We didn't have a lot of exposure to people that in my home community that were, that now in hindsight, knowing now that there's an identity like a two-spirit indigiqueer, it was not something that was talked about. And so that was something that like kept me in pain for so many years, and rooted in that with a lot of my childhood trauma and a lot of unresolved childhood trauma, so it's just like a multitude of things. I was already like preconditioned into a life of addiction. I had a lot of internalized homophobia. I had a lot of internalized racism. So those intersecting things there, my identity was rooted in my trauma and not who I really am. And I didn't really feed into that or explore that until in my adulthood, until I was able to feel safe and comfortable coming out. I had dated somebody when I was in my early 20s, but it was not a very healthy relationship because I was still in my active addiction and they were in their active addictions. But it was the only time that I felt comfortable or safe to be with another femme presenting person. And because the first time that I actually like held hands with somebody that was femme presenting, and I think I could safely say that they're female. They identify as female, another female. And so when I was out, I remember this in Calgary, I was at the Stampede. This was a few years ago. We were on the C train going to the Stampede grounds, and we were holding hands, and somebody like literally walked up to us and told us that we were going to go to hell. And so that really that stung, and that kind of scared me and retreated me into my burying that even further. And it even made my addictions even worse. So I went to treatment about the age of 23. I went to Palmaker's Lodge for 3-4 months. And ever since then, I've been trying to get sober. And so the last 2-3 years since 2019 is when I started like getting curious. I heard about two-spirit people like around that time, and I was questioning it within myself for a really long time. And once I sobered up, I did a little bit of research, and a lot of things at that time resonated with me, and how different I felt but there was nothing really to put it into words about how I felt as a person. And so I came into my two-spirit identity in 2020. I remember, I think it was like April, May 2020. I came out as two-spirit, and about 6 months later, 5, 6, that's around the same time that I got into activism. And so how that's, you know, there's a whole story there about how this all ties into like where I'm at with E2S. And so about 5 or 6 months after I started activism, and then I came into my two-spirit identity, I was approached by one of the founding members of the Edmonton Two-Spirit Society, and they had asked me if I was interested in becoming a board member, and because they saw the work that I was doing in the community, and like, really, me, like you chose little old me. And so that's how it further solidifies my identity as a two-spirit person, because it feels like home. It feels safe to be who I am in the spaces with the, you know, working with Edmonton Two-Spirit Society culturally, especially because knowing that I have my identity as a two-spirit person, and, you know, walking in different worlds, seeing things from different lenses, and able to, you know, similar with Rob, to shift into different perspectives, like even with Richard, different perspectives and the way of seeing things, like, and honoring the parts of myself that I otherwise denied for many years, you know, because there's no closets in Tipis. I really like that one. And I didn't know that there was like two-spirit people, what two-spirit people meant. And now, like, a year or two has gone by, going over a year working with E2S, the spaces that I've been in culturally, especially in ceremony, because there's so much, because of colonization and all of that stuff, you know, like, it kind of affected how the ceremonies were performed. And like, when I would go in when I was younger, go into ceremonies wearing like a skirt or, you know, stuff like that. And I was told I was not allowed to sit cross-legged. And I was like, why? And then, you know, having to sit in the female section, like, when I just didn't feel like I could, you know, I just, by default, that was my identity, was female. So I had to do everything as a woman. But real inside, I didn't want to go and, you know, I didn't want to go and sit on the women's side all the time. I wanted to go and sit and watch the escapios and go sit and learn how to carry rocks and stuff. And I was never allowed to do that, because there's the gender binaries that have now been brought because of the arrival and a lot of effect of residential schools, is the norms of which that, oh, I'm only a man is allowed to carry rocks, only a man is only allowed to do this. And it's like, well, you know, that's already putting a label on me that you don't even really know how I identify. And that's why I consider myself two-spirit indigiqueer, because I don't fit into one particular box. I honor the different perspectives, the different energies as a two-spirit person, and in different ways. And I feel that being able to work with E2S has allowed me to expand my mind and break those binaries, even in my own head. Like, that's a way that I'm decolonizing myself, is to, because all I've grown up my whole life was male and female. And so being able to pursue this work and expand my mind, and to learn about, you know, even the Cree people all on our own, like, we honored what was it, 8 genders? 8 genders. And, you know, that was something that I found so beautiful. And so, like, I resonated with that, because I'm like, oh my God, there's like so much more than what I knew. And I, like, my mind just continually gets blown because of all the things that I'm doing, the learning that I'm doing, and the self introspection about my own two-spirit identity, and how I can be like, what our roles were like historically, and how to revive that, you know, being able to sit in a position of leadership with a collective of like-minded individuals, you know, being able to do that, and honoring each other's, you know, how each individual identifies with a two-spirit, as a two-spirit person in their own way, because two-spirit is literally just an umbrella. It's you know, I learned in ceremony that it's actually just a made-up word, that it's just a better way of, it's like a westernized term for something that already existed. So to like be so people have something to speak on, on it about. I don't know how to word it like that, but learning that there's Cree words and there's a place, there's not just male and female, and there's Cree words for the in-between people. And even that keeps me connected and connected with my culture. This is not coming out, it's coming into the, being who I'm really meant to be, and not, I don't feel like I'm changing, but I'm just becoming more me. And so that ties into a lot of like how I love I got interested in tattooing. And so that's how I ended up getting a chin tattoo. As I can't really speak on like how and stuff, but how it is earned in my way, because that's something that's just between creator and I. And so, but the aspect of it is how I decolonize, because I'm trying to walk in two worlds. I work in a nail salon, and I am openly rocking my tattoos and everything, and it's actually like a BIPOC owned salon, and we exchange knowledge of different cultures. And I love that my boss is identifies under the being a rainbow relation. I like to use that, my rainbow relations and their partner, and being able to be myself in that, while carrying the weight of like all of my trauma, all of my ancestors' trauma, and still pushing forward, pushing through, and opening and expanding my mind by participating in ceremony, by engaging in conversations and learning the history of Two-Spirit people, learning the history of Nehiyao people, and how Nehiyao people, how we existed as Two-Spirit people in the Nehiyao way, and how we're trying to bring that back. So being able to be here and share what I know and learn from other people, especially other Two-Spirit people, because what I've learned is a lot of us are so gifted, and this is why you'll see a lot of Two-Spirit people that are artists, whatever modality of art. And so I think that's a beautiful way that we all express our Two-Spirit identities individually. And so I love being able to honor that, and seeing the multitude that there's, that everything that I knew about gender and sexuality and all, and unlearning that, it feels like it's a means of decolonization and of liberation for, especially owning sexuality, because there's, I keep going back to it, there's no closets and teepees, because, there's a place for us. We're here, Two-Spirit people exist. So I'm good with what I'm saying. So I'm going to pass it on. Hi.
Thanks so much, Ashley. I guess it's my turn.
Yeah, same question to you. And I think I was going to say that Ashley also tied in both of what Two-Spirit means to you, but also how you decolonize, right? Ashley kind of got into that, so you can speak on that as well.
Yeah, totally. I feel like my colleagues have already spoken so eloquently. I will do my best. Being Two-Spirit is really complicated and is complex and is personal and subjective. And how I perceive being Two-Spirit within a Cree perspective is probably more similar to Ashley's than it is to say somebody who's Dene or who's Anishinaabe or from another culture, even Navajo. We have Two-Spirit people all throughout Turtle Island, but there's lots of different cultures there. We're not just one homogenous group. And I think that really needs to also be applied to Two-Spirit people as well. We can't put a generic label on everybody. So as Ashley said, that term is quite new. It was developed out of a pipe ceremony for one of our elders. Her name is Myra Laramie. And in 1989, she had a vision. And in this pipe vision, she had the spirits come to her, and they kept saying this word, Nijmani Doag. And that is a literal translation, Two-Spirit into literal translation from Anishinaabe into Two-Spirit. And so that term was a way for her to recognize that we're disconnected, we're disjointed. And this is at the beginning of the resurgence movement. So when colonization happened and residential schools happened, that's where gendered spaces came in, and all of those gender roles that we honored, that Ashley talked about, men doing these roles, women doing these roles. Well, Two-Spirit people held the space between the balance of those roles. When men are off fighting and hunting, the women and the Two-Spirits are taking care of the home fires, right? So there was always a blending of roles. And I think Two-Spirit people honor that really well. But when colonization happened and this introduction of homophobia and shame, the way our bodies are sexualized in a way that never really existed before, and lots of that was from the residential schools, from colonization. But it forced a lot of the Two-Spirit movement, or gender and sexual diversity, Indigenous folks, underground. There is this, that internalized homophobia that Ashley was speaking towards is really common for a lot of Indigenous people, because we're programmed to be part of that binary, that Eurocentric, heteronormative, cisnormative way of living and being and loving. And I love that Rob talked about even just relationships, because I think we do need to step outside that binary in our relationships as well. And, monogamy is great, but it doesn't have to be the default. And I think we do a really good job of being able to navigate all these different worlds. But so Myra Laramie had this type ceremony, and they brought their vision to the third annual, it's called something else now, but I think at the time it was called the Gay and Lesbian Conference. It was in Winnipeg in 1990. And some of our elders that we still work with in community now were at that ceremony. And it was there that they decided that Two-Spirit could be a term that we could use. That could be a way of organizing ourselves, structuring ourselves, while folks reconnect to their traditional language and teachings. There's a really cool researcher, his name is Harlan Pruden. He's done some really cool research around Indigenous languages that honors diversity. And he found that there's over 130 unique terms for gender in various Indigenous languages. So we've always been here, we've always existed. But what does that mean, like on an individual level? You really do have to talk to each of us personally to kind of find out what that means. So I consider myself to be Kihêw, or part of the Tustu Winawak, which is the in-between people. That's one of our 8 genders that Ashley was talking about. And for a long time, I didn't know that could be a thing, that like I could actually, like I'm very similar to Ashley actually, in that I present very feminine a lot of the times, but that's a conscious choice because I can now take claim over femininity in a way that feels good to me, that feels right to me. But growing up, femininity was this thing that I just actively rejected. And I didn't understand that I was already rejecting gender roles. I didn't want to have babies. I knew right from a young age, I was like, that's not coming out of my body. That's not ever happening. I'm good. And I'm still good. I'm 34 now. I'm still okay with that. I might adopt, but I'm like, I'm not pushing no babies out, and that's fine. Like I'm not that kind of nurturer. I do my nurturing in community in other ways. And there's other ways for me to have that matriarchal kind of energy that doesn't have to require me putting my body through that. And I respect mothers. I'm not like throwing no shade towards people who want to birth, and not just mothers, but any parent who wants to birth a child. I'm not, no tea, no shade on that. It's just not for me. And I knew that from a young age, but I didn't have the language to describe what I was feeling. So I just was like, yeah, I'm obviously gay because I don't know what I am. I was bisexual at the time. I came out at 14, but I never really came out. I didn't have like the big, Mom, I'm gay. And it was the whole thing. I was just like, hey, Mom, I think I might be a little different. She's like, you got naked pearls on your wall. Of course you are. And I was like, cool. Okay. You already figured it out. We're good. And it was just a natural conversation. My family's always been very supportive of that. But we also have a lot of trauma in our family. And, my grandparents were residential school survivors as well. And that meant that a lot of the love that children grow up with wasn't really shown in our family. We didn't have a grandmother who was raised in a way that was, just like intimate and affectionate and loving. And again, I love my grandmother, and that's not her fault that she went through that in the schools. But it's also not like Two-Spirit's fault that we went through those systems as well. We went through residential schools, the 60 Scoops day schools. We were just forced so underground for a long time that it's really important that conversations like this are happening, because someone might hear our stories and be like, hey, holy Hannah, I relate as an Indigenous person to this conversation right now, because I never had these conversations when I was young. I never knew that you could be trans. I didn't know that was the thing. I didn't know. So I identify as trans. I am not a cisgender person. My assigned birth that I was given, the doctor was like, oh, they have a vulva. You're a girl. That just never really related for me. And so, like I say, I take control of my femininity now, but I explore my gender identity through my drag and being able to explore masculinity and putting on a beard. The first time I wore a beard at the International Two-Spirit Gathering, I was like feeling it. Like, I can't even describe. I was like, oh, I'm like mask. And I'm like, oh, I just loved it. Like, and now when I do it, I feel it. The first time I put a packer on, the binder, not so much, because I don't really have body dysphoria, particularly around my chest. Some trans folks do. I personally don't. So the first time I put the binder on, I was like, yeah, that's pretty flat. That's pretty cool. But I put that packer on and I was like, oh, he's a man. And this feels really good. And that was really uplifting and powerful for me to be able to explore masculinity in this healthy, artistic, creative way. And that, I think, is really important for me as a two-spirit person, because I'm also new in my journey. I've been with E2S for just over a year now, and I had no prior experience with E2S. I was brought in through a community, working alongside them through different roles, former people that we worked with. Oh, bye, Danielle, we love you. And so it was really, really important for me when I got into this role to be very clear that I am not a knowledge carrier. I am not an elder. I am not, I'm a learner in this process, and I'm very new in my learning still. I'm only a year in. And I took claim to being two-spirit in, I think it was 2018, but I was already, it might've been 17 actually. I was already entertaining the conversation, and my perspective of what it meant to be two-spirit was very Western, very academic. I had no cultural context for it like I do now, where I sit in ceremony with these amazing elders like Richard and Ed, and Blue Waters and all these people all across Canada, getting to know them. But I didn't have that in university. I just kept hearing two-spirit, two-spirit. And I was like, oh yeah, that means like you're a gay Nietzsche. Yeah, clearly that's me. But it's so much more than that. Like, being two-spirit doesn't necessarily mean that you're gender diverse, or it doesn't necessarily mean that you're sexually diverse. It's a personal thing, and it's a cultural thing. And it depends on what your teachings are in your nation. And maybe you don't have those teachings, and that's okay, because then you have other ways of connecting and claiming this. And so for me, I went to a ceremony, and that's, I think, a large part of the conversation of like, how do we decolonize these spaces? So there's an elder that we worked with, the late Roxanne Tatusis. So much love to Roxanne. She was a big ally and supporter of our community. And she was one of those first elders that I was having these conversations with around, what does it mean to be two-spirit? And she was just so straight up, like, I can't answer that for you. You know, like, that's your journey. You have to go on that, and you have to go through these processes yourself to figure out if that's something that you could take claim to. And she brought me to a ceremony one time, and I don't hold anything against the ceremonialist. He has healing to do. And many of our elders and our knowledge carriers still have healing to do, and we put them on pedestals a lot, which is beautiful, but we also need to support and uplift them in that healing journey, because they are also coming from backgrounds of trauma. And so this elder held some perspectives around two-spirit knowledge and identity that were not necessarily positive. And so we're in the lodge. It was the first round of the sweat lodge, and I had already offered my protocol to the Escapios. I don't know if you know how a lodge works. There's usually 4 rounds. You offer your prayers and your prints and your tobacco prior. They take those prayers into the lodge, and then the ceremony goes on. And there's 4 rounds in a Kihêw lodge. There's 4 rounds with a break in between each round. And he asked, and the lodges are dark, you can't see light inside them, it's a disjointed voice. And he asked, does anyone have any questions? And I just like flew out of my mouth. I wasn't intending to ask it. It just kind of came out. I was like, how do I know if I'm two-spirit? And I don't remember his full response, but that very first sentence resonated. It stuck with me. I can hear it in my head still. Don't concern yourself with that. And then he went on this little rant about how I have, I can have babies and be a mom. And that's my goal. That's my path, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I was in tears, because as I said, I don't want kids. I've right from a young age knew this was not for me. And so I'm sitting in this lodge, and here's this elder who I'm supposed to look up to, who doesn't know me, and is like, no, two-spirit doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. And I went through that lodge. I cried a lot. I cried every round. I left the round for a little bit, came back. But I made it through all 4 rounds. And I knew. I came out of that lodge being like, yeah, I got my answer. And I didn't get my answer from that person who has healing to do. I got my answer from sweating. I got my answer from crying and from praying and from shaking those rattles and hearing the language and being in ceremony, and having elders like Roxanne beside me in that process was really important. And so that's when I came out of that lodge being like, I'm two-spirit. I don't know what that means. And then realizing I had a long way to go to do that. And so I'm still in this journey. I'm still figuring out what it means to me. I just know that as a gender diverse person, as a sexually diverse person, there's ways in my community that honors me. There's ways in my language that honors me. And there's more and more ceremonialists and elders willing to hold space and learn with us and grow with us. And I think that's part of the most beautiful part of this is we are actively working to not only reintroduce Two Spirits back into our ceremonial spaces, but help them understand that maybe some of these ways that we've held on to in the last 100 years have come from colonization and haven't necessarily been our way of being and knowing, and recognizing that we can hold space for Western ways. And there's that two-eyed seeing theoretical framework. I think it's Albert Marshall is his name. And he talks about being able to walk in two worlds and holding a balance of those two things, holding Indigenous ways of being and knowing with Western knowledge and finding a comfortable way of holding it. And I think that's how we start to decolonize our spaces. We recognize is that not all of our spaces are going to be there yet. Like they're not quite ready for us yet. And so we need to have uncomfortable conversations with policymakers, leaders, all those folks who hold power in our community to help shift some of that power back to Two-Spirit people, and having uncomfortable conversations around, what kind of policies you have in place. Are you including us? Oh, I like that, bicultural. I really like that. They're including the ways that we navigate institutions, society, all of these things, because it needs to be coming from a way that's recognizing that the binary doesn't work for everybody. And there has to be opportunity for Two-Spirit people to grow and thrive in ways that works for them and that is culturally relevant. And I think that that includes our pride spaces. That includes conversations like this at institutions like MacEwan, supported by Concordia and Nate, having these real raw, frank conversations and vulnerable conversations. That's how we start to decolonize our spaces. So bring us in, but be mindful of why you're bringing us in. Are you bringing us in just because you need to check a box, or are you truly committed to having these conversations with us, holding space with us, and making space for us at the table? Because I tell you, like, we're just going to sit down if you don't invite us in. We're going to come in and we're going to like flip the table, and we don't need tables anymore. We're going to sit in a circle and we're going to talk this out. And that's how we start to decolonize our spaces. It's uncomfortable and we need to have those conversations. So I feel like I'm ranting a lot. So I'm going to move on to the next question, and I will pass this one on. Maybe we'll start with Richard this time around how can we start to decolonize our spaces, particularly at Pride.
Wow. I could listen to you all day, Cheyenne. You just like rock it. You just roll it. It just rolls out. I just love it. I love you. I love how you present yourself. I love how you just own the information. Like you're just like duck to water. It's like you found your jam. I love it. And so thank you for that. How do we decolonize? Wow, that's such a question. One of the ways that we decolonize is challenging some of those conceptions that people hold, and sometimes challenging elders, because here's the rub. Those elders and many elders have arrived in those spaces for a variety of reasons. Some have sacrificed for 30, 40 years, and then they got these youngsters, us younger folks that are coming in. Our gifts are generally intact. We're just being ourselves, like, oh, look at me, aren't I wonderful? And we didn't have to go through all of that 30, 40 years of fasting and sun dancing and learning, a thimbleful of knowledge from somebody that had just that much to begin with. And like going through all of that process that many of our ceremonial people have had to do. That's some of those folks have suffered for a long time and done a lot of things. So that's their experience. And then they arrive in a ceremonial place. They get a pipe or two or three. They might get an Okinawa, a stick, eagle staff. Maybe they have a few bundles. Maybe they have one bundle. They have these items. They have shakers. They have rattles. They've got drums. They've got stuff. They've accumulated ceremonial, what would I call that? Ceremonial capital. And so they've got all these things, and they've got this energy, and now they've arrived, and they've got, maybe they've finally they're starting to express their gift, and they're a little older. And what I'm finding is that, and what I've been told by one of my teachers and my mentors, is that in that space of arrival, in that ceremonial space, you're holding space between the natural world and the spirit world. And in that space is the energy that is ours, that is us, that is two-spirited, that is non-binary, that expands from that particle that I talked about into the wave of potential. And in that space is that two-spirited energy. So a whole bunch of those elders and traditional people are holding that space. They're holding that energy. They arrive there. That's the place they graduate to, if you will. And these are my perspectives based on the teachings that I've experienced, I've heard and received in my life. And so now you have a whole bunch of us younger folks that are owning, I'm gay, I'm two-spirited, I'm this, I'm that, I'm trans, I'm non-binary, I'm indigenous, and we're being open and we're celebrating that. And these old people, one, were never told about that binary gender stuff in those teachings. That was the furthest thing from any of those elders' minds, in some ways. And so in that space where two-spirit, gender diverse people and indigenous folks are experiencing a lot of pushback by a lot of those elders who have arrived in those spaces from a lot of that, elder conferred knowledge transfer from one elder to a noscapios, a helper, or a whole bunch of helpers. That process is very organic. It's wonderful, and it's in the moment. It's all those things. But you got to remember, let's back it up pre-colonization, when Hawk is sitting there saying, we got to open the portals on the coast to let all our relatives back to North America, to Turtle Island. They need the healing. And then they arrive, and then we kind of forget about who we are and how we are and all of that wonderful spiritual information. And they start killing all of our ceremonial people. Those original settlers, they were not well. They were very sick, psychotic people. They were, suffering from scurvy on them boats. And they had some interesting ideas about the world coming from all that, what do you call that? The Crusades in the UK, all of those things that were happening over there, killing all the witches and the warlocks and the people who were gifted, and women who were simple minders of, traditional medicines, like land-based medicines. They existed in UK. Indigenous people are from all over the world. Anybody who's got a place on the planet is indigenous to that space. We're indigenous, Métis, First Nations, Inuit people on this continent because we've been here on this continent for thousands and thousands of years. And we've got biomic, and that's my word for the day, energetic, genetic connection to the land. And that's why land-based healing is so important. That's why reconnecting to the land, getting out of the cities, getting to the land, go walk by the river, all of those things are so important. So decolonizing to me is remembering and challenging some of the ideas of some of those elders, because initially I believe that some of the southeastern nations sent scouts and sent tellers saying, and people who warned the other nations, here's what they're doing to our ceremonial people. Hide your ceremonial people. Hide your special people. So we were put in a closet, in closets that didn't exist in those teepees at the time. So that must have been quite an interesting experience for all those people. Why do I got to not tell what I am? Because there's people coming and they're going to try and kill you because they can't see it. They're scared of it, right? And it's about fear. Like all of that energy is like causes so much fear in people who don't have that energy to work with. They haven't arrived. They've not done 40, 30 years of ceremonies. They're not gender queer. regular old, binary person who, like, don't sell our binary folks short. They hold energy that some of the rest of us don't. And so in that, they're gifted. They have different gifts. And so for me, my ability to accept and to acknowledge all life on the planet, and not just human life. Like, we've got animal connections and animal relatives, and there's tons of stuff about that we're not talking about yet. So decolonizing is being willing to challenge some of those old ways of thinking and some of those old beliefs, and owning ourselves in the light and not being afraid of that. And you know what? Even though we do that, there are people who are going to push back, and they're going to throw shade, and they're going to throw medicine, and they're going to talk smack about who we are, and that's not real, it's made up. Well, for sure it's made up. The whole term two-spirit is made up. Cheyenne just said that. And a whole bunch of other people said that. It's not, they're not Nahel words, they're not Anishinaabewin words, they're not Iroquoian words, they're English words to describe a concept about openness and being open to be free. And it's scary for people. Open spaces, scary as heck for people, because it meant predators could see you and find you pretty damn fast, right? And so if you're wandering around in all that open space and there's predators around, they could get you. But the thing that I have to remember is that I have part predator in me. I am also part prey. And how am I all those things? Well, I have a bunch of different animal relatives that I can look back in my lineage and go, oh, that makes sense. Sometimes I get growly and gruff like old bear because I have bear relatives. Sometimes I just want to run and run and run and run like a horse because I have horse relatives. So when I remember that, not only do I have human filters, as in, Ukrainian or Russian or Potawatomi or like Tamil or whatever nation I'm from, there's all kinds of other things that come with me, right? And I'm not just that. There's so many other filters to look through. And when we step into that space of remembering more of who we are, that when I first started learning what the elders are about tobacco and about culture, and then how we fit in there as two-spirit, gender diverse folks. In that time, I remember, oh my gosh, I learned so many things that just blew my mind. I was like, really? We could do that? Really? We could do that? Oh my God, we could do that. And then I started looking back at my life and realizing, oh, I could do that. I've been doing that. I am those things they're talking about. Like, boom, like OMG, like this is a game changer. And more recently, I'm doing a lot more ceremonies, a lot more land-based things on the land that I come from. And the more I reconnect to the land, OMG, Avatar much. How many people love the movie Avatar? I watched that movie. I was like, oh my God, there's that scene I dreamed about. Oh my God, that's the dream. Months before I even knew about that movie, I had this amazing dream about sitting in a circle, holding all my relatives, and we were kind of like rocking back and forth, and it wasn't around a tree, but it was around an open circle. And then I went to that movie and I saw that scene. I'm like, oh my God, that's that scene. And I had never seen it. And that kind of energy, that circular motion energy, is where healing can happen like that. Like that Avatar movie, that James Cameron guy, he's channeling some freaking old energy. He's channeling some old teaching.
Sorry to interrupt, Richard. Just 2 more minutes. We only have about 10 minutes left in the session.
Okay, sorry. I do carry on. Who else didn't talk? Did we get everybody?
Are you done your thoughts? I'm sorry to interrupt. I always feel like a jerk being like,
I'm pretty much done, but it's just the two-spirit, the gender diversity, and the connection back to spirit, and that ability to transition from physical to non-physical. And that's the energy. So for me, that's so important to remember that when I'm in my states of and I want to freak out, I always have to, for me, I have to be so mindful of how I freak out and the words that I use, because words become energy. And if I'm not careful, I could harm myself or others. And so for me, I'm always trying to pull that back and do it in a way that's safe and comfortable, but authentic as well. And to own my own stuff and to never project my stuff onto other people. And that's such a challenge. It's always such a challenge. Because I have self-loathing. I have self-homophobia sometimes. And I've kind of been holding off on really performing in a drag space, because I haven't felt safe as a woman in this space, on our own planet, in my own home. And I'm getting better at that. And as I see more of the young people taking their space and owning their power, I'm like, okay, I can do this. So these young folks here are my elders. I just want to say that publicly, that I'm learning so much about how to own space and just rock it, no matter what, and to celebrate. And that's something that I've not gotten a lot of in the last little while, celebrating, because there's so much community building going on, and we got to do it. But you know what? We are ready for some good times and celebrate. Let's celebrate more. That's decolonizing and celebrating, no matter what.
Hi, Richard. Okay, so in the interest of time, we have 10 minutes. I don't know if folks are okay with going a couple minutes over. I don't know what you're all like, but I just want to give Rob a chance to also, if you feel comfortable answering that question, but maybe we could also just add in just a quick little wrap up of like, what is one message that you would like folks to take away from this? Like whether it be for our Indigenous youth or other Two-Spirit people, other people trying to connect, or even our settlers, like what? Is there a message that you want folks to walk away with? I'm also going to leave some links in the chat, just some resources and information around E2S. I will say right now that our organization is in a major state of transition. We do not currently have an office space. We just have a new interim executive director. So, we're kind of limited on the services that we can provide right now, but we're working on finding our grounding. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or need support. So I guess, Rob, we'll start with you. And the question was just if you want to answer the decolonizing question. If you don't, that's fine. But maybe just 2 or 3 minutes each to talk about what message you would like to leave folks with today.
Thanks. So you're talking about flipping over tables. Well, the diva in me would do the same thing, but somebody would be doing it for me. I'd just kind of be watching and supervising. That's just putting that out there. I didn't want to moderate or anything, but I was wondering if anybody had any questions out there. If they had any questions, and I could answer.
Good one. I didn't even, we're our schedule, very informal, like I said, but great question, Rob. Yes, absolutely.
Any questions or thoughts or things you just, anything. Yeah. Don't be shy.
I know both Jessica and I are watching to see if any questions come in, but go ahead and chat and we'll see if anything comes in. We'll let you know if we see any questions popping in.
I see a more practical, I'm not sure if that's the right word for decolonization. I know we're all advocates here. We all do our work, and that's part of being Two-Spirit, I think, is in both worlds and having a voice and being visible. I'm in social work because of the different levels, the micro, mecca, and the macro, meaning meeting people where they're at in person, community, and the higher levels. I also work on 2 roads. I'm also working with those that have the power, which are sadly Caucasian. A lot of male Caucasians have the power. And so I'm working with them. And when I'm able to work with them and not against them, some changes can be made. So that is my intention as Indigenous, to be able to say, hey, I'm walking to that boardroom, walk into that space where decisions are made, and have a voice there for people and say, you know what, we're moving forward. And I have been happy to make some of those changes, be part of that. When we're at the hospital, we were working with individuals, and they didn't want to use the name that was on their chart. So a few of us were advocating there, and now when they go, they use the name, their preferred name on their charts, and the doctors and nurses now use those preferred names. I'll make some names up. We had someone named Melinda, but they kept calling him George or them George. And it just was so difficult for that. And so we made that change saying, you know what, no. So those changes, making those changes step by step are things that I really find interesting. Oh, it looks like there's a question or something, I'm not sure.
That's a great question. Do you feel comfortable tackling it?
What is the question? I can't read it. I'm old and don't have my spectacles.
I am a non-binary, non-Indigenous person in a practicum at an Indigenous-led agency, and I have noticed that they work from very binary notions of gender. I have even shared my pronouns, which are they, them, a couple of times, and they have never been used. What suggestion could you give for a non-Indigenous person to bring up these topics in an Indigenous space?
That's a good question. I'd say don't. No, just kidding. No. Just keep your mouth quiet. Just do what you're told. No. That's a really good question, and that's something that, as Cheyenne was saying earlier, and same with Richard and Ashley, we come from a very patriarchal society and community where it is very binary, and so we're still working with that. And our people, through intergenerational trauma and through colonization, had a very male, very female way of doing things. I didn't know that there was a two-spirit and there's a different way of doing things in ceremony until like in the last 6 years. Before that, it was very binary for me. It was very male, very female, where they sat and what parts they did and what things they did with ceremony. So I would throw this to somebody else because I am not 100% sure, and I don't want to give you anything misleading. I would say be yourself, hold your truth, and just continue to say, hey, please call me by your pronoun. Just being polite and saying that, or saying hi, using the I statement. I feel this way when you're using the wrong pronoun. Please use this pronoun. And if you say that enough times, hopefully they will start doing that. It's hard though, I know it is. And I'm sorry you're going through that. I hope it works out. End scene.
Thanks so much, Rob. We really appreciate you joining us today. And please check out Rob, LaDonna Cree. They are Indigihouse. I believe they have a show coming up, maybe?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot that. Oh, bad, Queen, bad. Oh my goodness. Okay, so April 8th at the Evo Lounge, Evo, the gay bar downtown, we are doing a Indigihouse show. It starts at 9 o'clock. It's $10 at the door, or you can get them online. And it's on Facebook as well. And you can add me on Instagram, LaDonna Cree, and it'll be in my bio as well. Would love to see you there. And then we're also going to have Cheyenne in the future show, just letting you know. So just throwing it out there, Cheyenne. Yeah. And we're still waiting for Richard to come into the show. And actually, I don't know if you perform, but yeah, we should get you in there too.
I've been curious.
We'll get them in a beard yet. I'll just tackle, and he says, I think I pronounced their name right there, Anissa. That's a gorgeous name, actually. Yeah, like Rob said, that is a difficult conversation. And perhaps it's a way of gently encouraging them to reach out to organizations like E2S to perhaps receive some training around this. We can offer them to connect with our elders, to share like more of a peer-based knowledge exchange, or we could have our staff come in and do a full workshop. We can do inclusivity training, and we have a sliding scale depending on the organization. So we don't want to gatekeep this knowledge. We want to make sure that the folks who need it the most can get it. And really it's our Indigenous communities that need the healing the most. And that's where we're really trying to come back into the circle. So I recognize and I appreciate the struggle that you're going through. I use they, them pronouns exclusively, and it's a struggle in Indigenous communities. And I think it's just a matter of honoring that we come from a place of pain and grief. We're born into grief as Indigenous people, and that's kind of trickled into the way that we work with each other, and including non-Indigenous folks. So I hope that answers your question. I know it probably doesn't really, but if you'd like to get in touch with me, perhaps we can have a conversation with your organization, because I am kind of curious to know who they are, and perhaps there's a relationship that we can nurture there, just to help encourage some learning. Go ahead, Ashley.
Oops. So what am I answering? Is it that the advice to Indigenous
just a message that you would leave some folks as well. I don't know if that makes sense. Words hard.
I guess if you do have somebody in your life that is a youth and they're questioning their own indigenous queerness or their two-spiritedness, to reach out and, if somebody that feels that you're a safe enough person to share that with, to find them these types of supports so that, they don't have to, like, there's a reason why, because there was why these things exist now, because like when somebody like say such as myself was going through identity crisis, not so much anymore. I think I'm more solidified in that. But at the time when I was a youth, I never had these types of things to go to, being able to share this type of information, to let it be known that there's a place for a person, not, and especially if they are an Indigenous person who's questioning their two-spirit identity or, Indigenous queer identity, that there's a place and there's safe spaces for that are being developed, where we're building community, that it's existing, and that they don't have to struggle alone or live in any type of shame or be afraid of who they are or who they truly are. So if I could give one thing out is that. So I'm gonna mute now.
Hi, Ashley. Richard, do you want to wrap up?
Hi. Yeah, I'm loving the interchange and the sharing. For me, they and them in the trans community, for me, my heart goes out to all folks who identify as they, them, and there's such a lack of education for receiving who you are yet. And I want to be part of that education for my own benefit, because I know I still slip, and I try not to, and I'm consciously, it's a conscious thing, and I've been colonized like everybody else on this call, and but I'm getting some amazing teachings, and one of the gifts that I have is being able to reflect somebody a spirit name, and in that space of doing namings, some interesting things are happening for me. One of them is one name will arrive in my mind as the person gets close to asking me and presenting the tobacco and the gifts, the protocol, and then they'll hand it to me, and something will happen, and another name will appear as soon as they've handed it to me. And so I'm not exactly 100% sure, but one of the things that I got is I had a granddaughter who came and we did that. And in that space, that's when it first happened, when this different thing happened in the naming process, like that one name arrived first and then another name came after. And in that moment, I got such a clear vision of they and them, and the transness that this granddaughter was expressing, this grandchild was expressing. And it opened up such a space in my brain about that. And so for me, getting those teachings and getting those experiences and being able to reflect on them and say, okay, how am I not being respectful in this space? How am I not acknowledging somebody's identity? And then it comes back to, for me, my eyes, what my eyes see and what my brain thinks I'm seeing, versus what somebody sees inside themselves, which is all invisible to me. I can't see inside Cheyenne's brain. I can only see what I see, and what I see looks to me a certain way. Part of my training is being able to look twice, and that's that two-eyed seeing, and that's the late Peter O'Teese talked about, to look twice. The word respect. Is to do something again. Spect is part of to look at. Spectacle, spectator, somebody who watches, right? So respect is to look twice. So now I'm really getting more teachings and more opportunity to practice respect. Look twice, and don't be afraid to look twice. and look at the beauty of the person in their completeness when we look the second time. So I'm learning how to really enact that. And again, that's part of decolonization is being able to deconstruct all of that potential identity and look at, okay, how does that happen? And so for me, it's like Cheyenne and people like Gabe and Pilar and Kiksala, like people who present that way and who are that, are such amazing teachers for me, because they hold themselves in such grace even when I mess up. And so thank you for that, Cheyenne. Thank you for that. Because I'm so I want to get it right. You know, and maybe that's, you know, part of my colonizer thing is there's right and wrong, and there is no right and wrong. There is just what there is. But that, I just wanted to share that. And for the young person that, you know, the non-Indigenous person on the call, call us in so we can sit with our relatives, our Indigenous relatives, and have those conversations that you're not able to. I can speak direct. I can speak kindly, compassionately, and help tease out what some of the blocks might be with their brains. The same ones that I had, that I'm still working through. Like, I'm not any further ahead than anybody else, really. I'm not.
One more minute.
One final comment, just one final comment is, you know, I've had to learn, and I've chosen to learn and keep my open mind about it. For, you know, English is not our Indigenous language, and in our Indigenous language there are no pronouns. So every time I hear the pronoun stuff, initially I was like, pronouns. And now it's like, okay, pronouns aren't that important for me, particularly because I'm fine with being male. I present as male. I am male. I identify as male in those spaces where I'm presenting my gender openness, my fluidity. It's a different matter. But there's all these other things that happen for us as Indigenous people when we're using English language, and so the pronoun conversation is part of that challenge. And I think it's not impossible to get through. I'm getting through it. It's a challenge. It's it's frustrating. It's anxiety ridden, and but at the bottom of the line for me, it's like I want to maintain good relationships with my kin, all of my kin. So I need to get this. I need to get this stuff in my head and in my heart. So that's my commitment. But to the young person, call us in. We can help you. We can say things you can't.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much. So we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much. My last little message that I leave you with is that we love you. You're loved, you're worthy, you matter, you belong in our circle and you belong in our spaces. And if you're an ally, you're not Indigenous, you still have a space in our circle. It just might look a little differently. But we need you behind us and beside us, not behind us. We need you beside us, supporting us and walking with us. So wow, thank you so much. I am grateful to you all for spending time with us, for holding our vulnerabilities, our honesties, and it's not a session if Cheyenne doesn't cry, and here we are. So I made it all the way to the end. I just
didn't last that long.
I've seen you crying a lot. But yeah, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. We are open to hold space for you, chat with you. I have put some resources into the chat. Feel free to download them. My email's there. And our website's down right now. Hopefully it'll be up again soon, but you can find us on social media. And tonight, I'm not to plug another university's events, but we do have an event with Elder Ed LaValle tonight. He is hosting, being hosted with U of A Pride, and you can find that on the U of A website, and it's an Ask an Elder event with our Elder Ed LaValle. So, and I will be hosting an Indigenous Spaces after that. I'm also going to be doing a full Two-Spirit knowledge presentation for U of A Pride as well, and that's next week. So you can find the information on that website. And thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to McEwen, Nate, Concordia, all of the collective that helped sponsor us to have this event today, and go forth and walk in a good way. Hi.
thanks everyone for joining us today for this conversation. I appreciate our panelists for sharing in such a vulnerable and real way. The authenticity of your comments and what you shared with us and your teachings was incredible. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to, as we develop our space a little bit more at McEwen. It's under renovations right now, but after that's done, we look forward to having these conversations in person and being able to host ceremony and things like that. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and I hope the rest of your day is incredible. And Richard, we're holding your family in our hearts right now. So thank you for sharing with us.
Bye, folks.